There's a reason veteran backpackers call 2 a.m. the animal hour. Most nights it's deer on hooves, raccoons on little hands, wind in the guy lines. But on 3 different trips, 3 different people heard something circling their tents that didn't breathe like wildlife and didn't move like it either. What follows are their nights, as they told me, with names and locations adjusted just enough to protect them. The details that matter haven't changed, the cadence of steps, the way nylon whispers when a fingertip presses in, the cold calculation of someone who waits for you to unzip. Story 1 was Ethan and Marco, 2 college friends who booked a late-season Sunday at a state campground inside the Pine Barrens. Their site sat under skinny pitch pines, Site 41, a flat square of packed needles a short walk from the bathhouse. They brought a cheap blue dome tent, a cooler, and more confidence than sense. They told their parents the campground had a host and patrols. In late October, neither mattered, half the loop sat dark, the ranger kiosk was empty, and their nearest neighbor's embers were cold by 11. They killed the lantern at midnight. The only sounds were interstate hush far away and the needles hissing when the wind nudged them. Ethan fell asleep to his phone's offline playlist. Marco muttered something about setting the cooler inside the car and didn't get up. Around 2:07 a.m., Ethan woke because the tent moved. Not just a breeze ripple, a push, deliberate and slow, like someone leaned 2 fingers into the wall and traced a circle. Ethan stayed still. Marco stopped breathing the way sleeping people do and started breathing the way listening people do, shallow, held, released. The circle kept going, clockwise, knee level, then shoulder height, then around by the head. Footsteps came with it, step, step, pause. Not hooves. Not claws. Weight on gravel. The step stopped at the zipper. A fingernail tapped the pole once. Then a whisper, close enough to fog the mesh, "You awake?" Ethan's thumb found the key fob in his pocket. They'd laughed about the tip online, sleep with your keys, your car horn is your bear. He pressed and held. The horn detonated the quiet. Headlights flashed white through the nylon. The footsteps broke into a sprint across the pads. Another set of feet ran too, from behind the bathhouse, gravel scattering. By the time Ethan killed the alarm, the only sound left was wind in the pines and Marco swearing into his sleeping bag. In the morning, dew turned the needles to glass. The boys found boot prints in the dust, not tread marks but flattened ovals like the soles had been wrapped smooth. A length of fishing line ran from the tent zipper to a sapling at ankle height, the kind of thing that would pull your door open if you stumbled out fast. 10 yards away, half buried under pine straw, Ethan kicked a cheap trail camera, still on. They turned it over to a ranger, filed a report, and drove home in daylight. The ranger called Ethan 2 days later to say the SD card was blank. The camera timestamp showed it had been placed the previous afternoon and set to record only after 3 a.m. Whoever watched them circle had planned for patience. Ethan still keeps his keys under his pillow when he camps. He kept the fishing line, folded into a sandwich bag. It lives in the glove box, a reminder that nothing about a fiberglass zipper and 5 feet of mesh is a lock. Story 2 didn't have a ranger kiosk, or neighbors, or bathroom lights. Maya and her older sister Tina prefer the empty places, the free kind of camping you get on Forest Service maps where a numbered road chokes into ruts and you pick a flat patch under the stars. Late summer, southern Utah, red dust and juniper. Their third presence was Juniper, a 40-pound healer with a scar on her muzzle and an instinct for everything that breathes wrong. The day was heat and laughing and a cheap stovetop mac and cheese that turned smoky in the best way. They put their phones in airplane mode to save the batteries, took pictures of the Milky Way, and zipped in early on account of mosquitoes. Sometime after 2, Juniper went rigid. She didn't bark. Her ears pressed flat, and her throat made a sound Maya hadn't heard before, not a growl so much as a hum building up from her paws. Footsteps circled the tent, not hurried, not sneaking, confident. They were heavy enough that Maya felt grit vibrate through her sleeping pad with each step. Then a shape pressed a fingertip into the mesh at knee height and drew a line. The nylon whispered. Whatever it was carried a stick, because the next sound was the stick dragged slow along the pole until it clicked at the grommet. A human sound followed, a breath like someone tasting the air. Tina whispered, "Don't move." Maya's hand found the bear spray and eased off the safety. The circling paused, then resumed, and then the same breath came from the opposite side of the tent, as if there were two. Juniper's hum became a tremor. The tent wall bowed inward an inch. Maya squeezed the trigger through the mesh and painted a tight orange cone where the pressure was. The sound that came back wasn't animal. It was a man's cough and a curse, and then gravel flying. Something else moved near the car. The faint clack of a door handle trying, then the pop of the fuel door. Maya hit the panic button. The Subaru came alive, horn shattering the stillness, hazard strobing orange. Two sets of footsteps sprinted away, one angling downslope into the scrub, one cutting across the road. The horn echoed, died, and left the kind of silence that feels like a held breath. Juniper finally barked once, sharp and angry. Then silence returned. At first light they unzipped slow and stepped into a still world that smelled faintly of capsaicin. The orange mist had dried to a tacky film on the mesh. Juniper sniffed, sneezed, and led them in a cautious circle. Two sets of prints crossed their sight, one in boots with a worn heel edge, one in smooth-soled shoes that left little more than ovals in the dust. Near the Subaru, greasy fingerprints smudged the handle and a slim Jim scrape marked the weather strip. 30 yards downslope, they found a stomped-out cigarette and a twisted loop of cord tied to a juniper branch at shin height, the end cut clean. They packed fast, drove until they had bars, and called the county. A deputy met them, took photos, said they weren't the first. He told them to keep the dog, keep the horn, and stick to witnesses, not sagebrush. New story, new forest, same hour. This one belonged to Rob, who took his 9-year-old, Emma, for her first backcountry night in the Smokies. They hiked late to make the shelter but found it full, so they pitched a small tent in the clearing beside it. The day had been fireflies and creek crossings, the kind of ease that convinces you the woods are gentle if you are. Emma fell asleep proud and exhausted. Rob lay awake counting owls. Close to 2, the counting stopped because something had begun to count them. Steps moved around the tent in slow, deliberate arcs. Not a bear's shuffle, not a deer's skitter. A human cadence that paused at Emma's side, then at Rob's, then at the zipper. Nylon indented, inch by inch, the way a palm does when someone leans in to test a boundary. Rob said in his calmest dad voice that a ranger was walking over, that he'd appreciate them stepping back. The pressure didn't change. A metallic sound followed, like a key tapping teeth. Rob had staged an air horn by the door and a headlamp in his hand. He thumbed the lamp to full, snapped on the strobe, and held the horn for 2 long blasts. From the shelter came startled voices and a dog's bark. From the dark beyond the light came a shape stepping back, then sideways, a man's silhouette froze, then pivoted and threaded between trees. Another, smaller shape peeled off in the opposite direction. 2. Always 2. In the morning, the shelter crowd pretended not to have heard, which is its own kind of politeness. Rob and Emma broke camp and found that one stake had been pulled an inch, the cooler lid unlatched, and a length of fishing line tied low from their guy line to a sapling, invisible until the sun hit it. He photographed the setup and walked it to the ranger station at the trailhead. The ranger later noted similar setups nearby. At noon a tent is a room, at 2 a.m. it's an invitation. Light, noise, and neighbors win. Choose them always.